morning, everybody. It's Jean here. This is Jean's Block Party 2019. I have been working this week on blocks number 7 and 8. And as you know from last week, I've put up 2 separate videos. It was just too long because it takes about 20 to 25 minutes to explain one block. So it's too long a video to keep all in one. But here are our 2 blocks. This is block number 7, and this is block number 8. But right now we're concentrating on block number 7. I've used, it's like a twirling star. I have used 3 different fabrics, a dark, a medium, and a light. I've given you cutting instructions. And it's basically a 9 patch. We're concentrating, and I say it in my video, we're concentrating pretty much on 9 patches and 4 patches, different configurations, half square triangles. I've done a little bit of the next block, I've done a little bit of strip piecing. So just to get some techniques under your belt. But before I start the tutorial, I just wanted to tell you, a couple people have asked me about their stitch length when they're piecing. In fact, somebody had emailed me and said they wanted the look of hand quilting. So they were setting on their machine a stitch length like 3.5. And their seams were coming out. What were they doing wrong? And I was like, oh, I said, you know, hand quilting, you know, those individual stitches at the end of the day, or even hand piecing would be 2 different things. And piece very small and then quilt a larger quilting stitch. But it's nothing like a machine quilted quilt or machine pieced stitch. So I was thinking about it when I was growing up, back in the old days when I walked 5 miles to school barefoot uphill. The machines in our home ec class that I learned on had the sort of the dial that it was like 12 to 15. Do you remember that? Or 6. 6 was a basting stitch, a large stitch, a longer stitch. 12 was the 12 stitches to an inch. And then 15 was a very small stitch. And I forgot all about that. So when I always say, oh, set your stitch length to 12, then I come over to my modern machines, and I'm thinking, where the heck is my 12 and my 15 and my 6 for my basting stitch? And it's like, you know, like set your machine at like 2.5. And I'm thinking, what is that? So I looked it up, and I'm thinking, apparently, the newer machines do it in millimeters or something like that. I don't know. It's like metric or something. So what I'm getting at is the smaller, like to 1.8 to 2 is a smaller stitch, perhaps getting your 12 stitches to the inch. And then your like 2.5 to 3 would be getting long, you know, bigger stitches, and then back to down almost to 0. Your stitches are minuscule. So figure out your stitch length. And why I'm saying that is when you're piecing, you want a bit of a shorter stitch length, because we are not back stitching on most of our seams. We're not back stitching. Again, we're not back stitching because all of the seams are intersecting. Sometimes I might occasionally say back stitch on this unit, but that's the beauty of a smaller, of a shorter stitch length. That's all I'm saying. So anyway, this is block number 7. Again, I used 3 different fabrics. So pretty, lovely star. You have quite a few corners to match, and as I say in my tutorial, don't sweat it. I'm not perfect. It's a few stitches, a few threads out. Oh my word. Whatever. Who cares? Just do it. Because I said that, and I repeat myself, right? That sometimes when you start ripping out with a seam ripper, you make more of a mess than when you just do it one time. So your beginners, be proud of what you've done. Don't worry about it. The most important thing, keep reiterating it, and this will follow you your whole quilting journey whenever you follow a pattern, is your 1/4 inch seam. And what else? You're ironing, you're pressing. 2 of the basic, most important things in quilting. So hopefully by block 7 and 8, you're enjoying it. Again, I'm going to be trying to do my web page, and then I would like maybe like if you could send me one picture of all 8 blocks, not 8 individual pictures, because it took a tremendous amount of time. We have 42 blocks to go, and if I have dozens of people sending it, I don't want to be spending time in front of my computer. So if you could just lay out 8 blocks at a time and send them to me, truelovequiltsforyou@gmail.com. I eventually will put them up on a page. Jen is coming later to help me do my web page. So if you could just sort of lay out all of your blocks, 8 of them maybe, or 8 of them at a time, just one picture, as opposed to all separate pictures. It would make it a lot easier for me. I'd rather spend my time sewing than on my computer. So anyway, that's it. That's my tutorial to follow. And then I'm going to just do another little intro on my block number 8. So yeah, have at it. And yeah, all the best for making this pretty block. All right, folks. See ya. So here I am working on block 7 of our block party. I just wanted to address a few things. We have been working, if you have gotten to this point with your basic quilting supplies, you've gotten your mat, you've gotten your rulers, hopefully you've gotten your, let me see if that's in frame, yeah, you've gotten your 9.5 inch square. Really just makes a nice difference. And as you know, I have been working with my long rulers, my 18 inch and my 24 inch. I just wanted to show you this ruler that I had gotten ages ago. I don't know if they still make them. Probably they do. This is called let me just see here. Let me just put it on a piece of paper here so you can see. Yeah, this is called an Olipfa lip edge ruler. I guess it's not an Olfa. It's called it's www.olipfa.com. Olipfa lip edge ruler. Now what that has, it has this edge that when you put it up onto your cutting mat, it grabs your cutting mat, and you can make a nice straight cut, if you can see that. So you are guaranteed, if your cutting mat is lovely and straight, that you are going to have your ruler your fabric fairly straight. I have 2 of them, and I bought these. There's that one. I bought these ever such a long time ago. I must have bought them 10, 12, 13 years ago when I first started quilting, because I was having, as some of you might have, I've gotten a lot of comments that how do you keep your ruler straight? Well, other than, you're holding it and you're cutting it. Well, I found that this lip edge ruler here on my, as you can see here, on my cutting mat, just is a wonderful thing. Now, having said that, as you know, I love my rulers, and that's probably what you have. But, sorry folks, I'm going to be using my Fiskars ruler from now on. Well, maybe from not now on, but I really, really, really love, if you've been watching me, I drone on, about this Fiskars. It's a rotary cutter. The cutter is in here, away from your hands, and a ruler. Now, the rotary cutter is right on the edge. So when you put this ruler down and you butt up to make a line, you know that where would you actually be sewing, cutting with your rotary cutter, that's where this cutter, I'm not pushing down, that's where this cutter comes in. Now, I have recommended, I don't work for Fiskars. I should, flippin' heck, I should. I bet they've sold a whole bunch. But anyway, I really like this Fiskars. As I said, I like all brands, all sorts of brands. This is an Omni Grid, that's a Fiskars, blah, blah, blah. But I really like this ruler. Some of you don't. I don't know. I like it. So I'm going to be using it for my cuts. That's that. So now I'm going to be using these 2 rulers. If I have to use my handy dandy rotary cutter, by all means I will. But right now we are making the star, and we're using for this block 3 different fabrics. Hopefully you have seen it. You'll have seen this star, this 9.5 inch block. And for my star fabric, I'm going to be using this darker fabric here. This light is going you will have seen it around the star, and this medium tone is the outside edges. But right for now, we are going to be cutting from my my star fabric, my dark fabric. We're going to be cutting one. I'm using my 10-inch square because I have enough fabric in here. I'm going to line that up on my board here. Am I in the, yeah, I'm in the frame. And now this one doesn't have a lip, but you've not, most of you don't have the one with the lip, so you're just going to have to keep your fabric nice and your ruler nice and square. Keep your fabric nice and square on your cutting mat lines, as you have done. We're just making half square triangles. Maybe for the next little while we're going to be making half square triangles. Now what I want us to do is we're going to cut, I'm going to do this one first. We're going to cut 2, 1, 2. I can get out of a 10-inch square, or your scrap, or your fat quarter. I'm going to be cutting 2, 3, and 7/8 inch squares. I'm cutting 2, 3, and 7/8 inch squares. Now remember, the 7/8 inch square is the one right before the 1, 2, 3. The little line, there's the 4. It's the one right before, not the 3/4, not the second line in. If you have a ruler like this, it's the line right before the number 4, because 4 would be 8/8, right? So this is 3 and 7/8. So I'm going to put my ruler on my 3 and 7/8 inch, and as you can see, I go to the top of my valley, my top of my mountain on my pinked edge. I line my 3 and 7/8 inch there. I line my 3 and 7/8 inch here, and then with this ruler, that's it, done. No blade, I don't have to worry about it. Now I'm gonna cut this one. I'll subcut that in a moment. I'm just going to take this piece over here, and I'm cutting one 3.5 inch square. Now, I could come down here and do it this way with my rotary cutter, but I'm just going to cut this in a 3.5 inch strip here. I'm just going to cut this strip 3.5 inches. And then I'm going to subcut this, put it on a nice straight line, go to the top of my mountain over here. There's my perfect 3.5 inch square. Done. Now I'm going to cut out of this one. I'm going to line it up. I'm going to making sure it's all lovely and straight. I'm going to go to my 3 7/8 inch square. It's perfect here. It's perfect there. Remember, measure twice. 1, 3 7/8. I want to keep that separate so I don't get mixed up. And quite a lot of people are saying, oh, I like this 2 ruler method. I just found, I don't know, maybe, I don't know who invented it, but I really like the 2 ruler method to get a nice square. So that's going to be my star. Now for my outside, I'm going to be cutting my fabric. I'm going to be cutting 2 3 7/8 inch squares. That's it. So I'm going to come out, I'm going to line this up really nice. I'm going to find my 3 7/8 inch, which is right there, and down here, the top of my mountain. Right there is the line. And I'm going to be cutting 2 3 7/8 inch squares. And there you go. One. I mean, if you can see how lovely. Sometimes I'm a little bit clumsy with a rotary cutter. Not that I'm dangerous or anything, but this is like a no-brainer to me, like that. I've had this for 5 years. I've never changed a blade. I don't get that. That's amazing. So now what I want the light fabric, which is around the star. I'm going to be cutting 4 3 7/8 inch. So again, same thing. This is getting a bit like, but for beginners, you might want to, be able to see. So I find my 3 7/8 inch there. I come down, and there it is at the top of my mountain there. I'm going to cut 1, and then I'm going to cut 2. And then I'll subcut these into 4 squares. Oops, it shifted. Got to be careful, Jean. Now I can put these together. And I'll just scratch them together, line them up real nice on a lovely line. Find my 3 7/8 inch. There's 2. And there's 2. Now, what we're going to be doing is on the right side of our 2 lighter fabrics, we're going to be making our lines. Remember, we're going to be making our lines because we're going to be making half square triangles. So we did this last week with a pen. We're going to be marking diagonal to diagonal on our fabric, and you don't have to worry because we're cutting that line away. If you're just joining us, you're like, well, we're drawing on fabric. So we're going to be doing that. Diagonal to diagonal. And then on our medium color fabrics. Diagonal to diagonal. And then I'll show you what we do next. I have to apologize. You could have skipped one step right there about the marking. All you really needed to do is mark the 4 light things, because we're putting together our half square triangles. I've already pinned them. I've pinned 2 of our light blocks to my dark SAR. And then 2 of our light blocks to my medium fabric. But look, there's the line. Oh, that'd be so interesting to see if you actually stitch on that line. Oh, I didn't stitch. Yeah, whatever. So all you need to do is mark the diagonal on the 4 light bits, okay? Now I'm going to go over to my sewing machine and I'm going to just chain piece this lot right here. Chain piece that, and then we'll put our blocks together. So I'm at my machine. And as you can see, I have my 4 blocks together. And if you need, if you need to put a little piece of fabric here, remember our leader, that you don't get chunked into that hole. I don't have that slot. I have just one little hole. Now what we're going to do to our half square triangles, we're going to stitch a 1/4 inch away from that line. So you want to put your presser foot on the line, right next to the line. Get your threads behind, and then you're going to stitch a 1/4 inch, which you found, away from that line on either side. So here's my 1/4 inch. And then chain piecing means you can just keep going. So just put that carefully under the presser foot. Just go slowly along that line. You don't have to stop and start. Needle down, presser foot up. Right next to that line. Half square triangles. Once you perfect them, and as I said last week, there are a lot of ways to make half square triangles. Lots and lots of ways. But this is the most traditional way, marking. There is a way, I used to do it on my other machine, that you actually mark a line here, and your eye just follows the straight line with that diagonal point. You can either put tape, but that's for another time. Oh, sorry. No, I don't have to. Well, I will. Okay. You don't have to. You can just sort of twirl it around like I did last week. But what we're going to do is we're just going to turn these around. We're going to find the other side of our line. Carefully start. Oh, I have a beef stroganoff cooking. It smells so good. It was so funny. My son Niles, they got married last year, and he called me the other night, and he's like, Mom, he's like, how do you make your beef stroganoff? It was funny. So I gave him, it's like the ghetto version, just a couple cans of soup and stuff like that, and noodles and sour cream, but boy, is it good. And it made me feel so good. And his wife, Allie, she texted me a picture, and she said, my sweet husband made me this, his favorite from his mom's, his growing up, his mom's favorite dish, and it was, I understand now why he raved about it. It was so good. She sent me a picture. But it was funny because I was saying, like, you know, get like 5 pounds of meat and like 5 cans of this and 2. I cooked for like 1 million people. He's like, Mom, there's 2 of us. But he even made a big casserole dish. But that type of casserole, like, is so much better the next day. So yeah. Okay, so I'm done that, and I'm gonna clip these. I'm gonna clip these little chains apart. Now, what am I gonna do? The most important thing. I'm going to take this over to my ironing board. I'm going to just press these right now, just like they are. I like to press things. Take my pins out, and then I'm going to cut them apart on the line. Remember, I'm going to cut them apart on that line, and then I'm going to open them up. I'm going to set that seam, and then I'm going to press all of them to the dark side, and then I'll be back. So again, if you didn't get that, I'm back over here. I am going to use my rotary cutter and my little ruler for this. I'm going to go on the line. Remember, we go on the line and we separate them on the line. You're going to cut on that line. Open up your cutter, close it. Put your ruler on the line, open your cutter, close it. And now what we're going to do is, like I said, I'm going to go over to my ironing board. I'm going to press all of these seams, and then with the dark side, or this side, the medium side over, I'm going to just roll that up, careful because this is on the bias, and make our lovely half square triangles. And then when they're all done, I'm going to come back and I'm going to take away those little dog ears, nice and square with the fabric. I've set my seams, I've pressed to the dark side, and now I've cut off all my little dog ears. If you can see, here's my little pile of dog ears. But also what I'm doing is what I was saying before. Sometimes you want to square up. Our blocks for this block here, which is basically a 9 patch, which we've made before. We have 9 units here, this being the center. We want these exactly 3.5 inches. Unfinished, like here. So what I'm going to do is I line this up, and I line up on the corner of my ruler with my my ones over here. There's a line that goes down your ruler, a diagonal line, and you can sort of just put that ruler, that line right there, and measure 3.5 inches. So your block is nice and square. I'm doing it to the top of my mountain, and there's just a sliver. Whoops! Make sure it doesn't shift. There's just a sliver, that slightest sliver, but that can make the world of difference. I've done these too. Let me see these ones. This is called squaring up. Sometimes you might have to move your block all over the place. Here's another one that's just slightly bigger. So I square them up to the exact 3.5 inches. The exact 3.5 inches. You can do this. There's rulers that sort of slot onto the seam. That one's perfect. So there's all sorts of gadgets and for doing that, for doing exactly that. Now we're going to put our block together. So here is my block put together. As you know, I like to have my visual. So be very careful with your orientation. It's sort of a wonky star. And so what you're wanting these dark, you're wanting your center square. Here are my 3.5 inch 9 patch unit. You want your center square, and then you want to build around that and make sure as you go along, that's why you need the contrast, that the contrast, you see your star pop out, as you can see that. And then I have these medium colored corners. Again, if you're doing it scrappy, I would suggest that your center star be one color. If you're doing, even if you're doing it scrappy, just, or whatever you want to do, I don't care. But like it makes a star. I think it makes a pretty block. And then your four corners can be the same or not, or whatever. Your neutral, your light fabric. So yeah, so that's my star. Now, putting it together. It's a simple 9 patch. What do we do? Even though it's half square triangle, same principle. We're going to put the right over to the left. Now you're going to see what happens with those seams. They're going to nest together. They're going to nest together. You're going to stitch this seam, right? And then you're going to come, you can pin that by all means, and you're going to come over and you're going to do this unit. Now that doesn't nest because this one, that seam is up there and this one is down here. So just pin that carefully. I'm going to take this one over to here. I'm going to take this one over to here. Sometimes I'll move my unit over next to my machine, but in the exact configuration. So I can just grab from next to my machine, but I want to be aware of exactly where my stars go. And so don't rush this whole thing. Don't like, oh, I can chain piece this. A lot of people, experienced quilters, do, but it's not necessary when you're starting out. Just do one over to there, and then we'll make the 3 units, and then we'll put them together. So I've sewn together these 3 units here for our 9 patch, which we've done before. Just a more interesting 9 patch. And it's interesting because, again, remember I always say most of the time you press to the dark, right? Well, you're thinking, well, there's light and there's dark and light. Where do I press? I always, again, it was interesting. This fabric here told me that it sort of wanted to go out. These seams to go to the light, But then this fabric here, which are 3 darks, sort of said, oh, I want to go into the inside, and the opposite here. These are going this way. And that makes for what? Perfect nesting seams. Isn't that interesting? So, however, it's not a hard and fast rule, as you will see. So now we have our units, our beautiful star, and what are we going to do? We're going to just take the pretty sides, back to the pretty sides, always the pretty side to the pretty side. And I'm going to nest this seam beautifully. And it does have this point here. Now we're nesting up a point. But you can see, you're going to start at one end, you can see that nested seam. One is going one way and one is going the other way. Now somebody said they put their pins on either side, which is fine. So now what I'm going to do is on both of these units, I'm going to go over, I'm going to do my 1/4 inch seam across there, flip that up, and then I'm going to do the exact same thing to attach my bottom unit. So there is my finished block. It's pretty good. I'm about a thread out there and about a thread out there. Who cares? Let me just see. Because this looks a bit, oh no, it's perfect. Yeah, it's perfect. Look at that. Let me just see. Yep, it's perfect on all sides. All 4 sides, it's perfect. So, well, it's not perfect, but it's almost perfect. So, yeah, so there is our, like, sort of a twirling star with the corner units, a little bit more interesting than we've had. And I love it. Yeah. So, but what is it? A basic 9 patch? You have to be very careful because you are matching up these points. You're like, oh, all these points. But if you've done your 1/4 inch, and again, that's a hair out and that's a hair out. It's awesome. It's beautiful, wonderful. Don't be sweating it. Sometimes if you don't have your 1/4 inch seam and you might be like out, like you're out. Try to perfect your 1/4 inch seam. But if you're out just like that, like maybe a perfectionist, I will show you. See how that point right there is maybe 2 sets. Maybe a perfectionist would go, oh, that point doesn't match. I'm going to rip it out. If you start ripping out your seams here, because you have seams here and a seam here, it comes sometimes even with the sharpest seam ripper, you can make more of a mess. You can distort your block. So that's what I'm saying. It's It's whatever. It is wonderful. You've made your block. Even if your points don't match, please don't sweat it. Please don't sweat it. Try to enjoy it. There is our star. There's our star. 1/4 inch it seems. Pretty much. That's, you know, that's good. That's a good one. That's a 1/4 inch. So when we saw, why I'm saying about this 1/4 inch and this 1/4 inch here and that 1/4 inch there and that quarter is when we sew either our blocks together or a sashing, you're not going to be cutting off those points. Again, the importance of a 1/4 inch seam. So that is block number 7. Awesome. Thank you.